right, folks, good afternoon. Is anybody out there? Couple people. All right. Whew. I'm an associate member of T3 Trading Group, which is an SEC registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA. All of my trades are placed through T3 Trading Group. You should carefully consider whether trading is suitable for you in light of your own financial condition. My position disclosure, I got out of the last bits of that TEM that I had when it nearly got to my target, and I gave it all the way back. I also got out of that ASPI, which basically got to my target yesterday. I kind of had a risk-reward stop on what I had left and got stopped out of that. Got stopped out of what I had left. That was a great couple-day trade. And I added on this TSLQ, which is basically just more Tesla short that I traded all day. So that's the updates on the position disclosure. Palantir getting hit here a little bit after hours. Just give me one quick second to potentially cover some if I can. Just want to cancel this one bid that I have, which of course I can't find. There it is. All right, so how'd we close today? So we actually had a down day in the S&P. SPYs are down 0.5%. The Qs are down 0.5%. The IWM is down 1.2%. The RSP is down 0.8%. TLT is up really small, and the dollar is also up small. This market is starting to be a little unprecedented if you look at some statistics. So seeing poor leadership in the market as the market moves higher is not unusual, especially this year, the year 2024, really the last couple years. It's been very normal actually for us to have the Mag 7 stocks leading up. I mean, there were so many points. How much time did we spend throughout the entire year of 2024 comparing how the Qs were trading throughout this calendar year versus how the IWM was trading through this calendar year? The Russell spent the vast majority of the year pretty much going sideways outside of that one big pop that we had in July, which was part of a rotation trade. It kind of, raised the range, I guess, that the Russell was trading in. But for the most part, the IWM has not done a whole lot this year, and the Qs let us up. So it is not unusual at all for us to be dealing with a market that is weak on leadership, where most stocks are not performing, where it's all about NVIDIA, where it's all about the Mag 7. It's not unusual. We're used to that. And I often like to remind everyone that the statistics that I've seen show that poor market breadth is not necessarily a bearish sign for the market. And I think a lot of times that's misquoted, and that's why I like to say it so often. I think oftentimes you'll hear, oh, wow, there's only a few stocks leading us higher, so that means that the whole market's gonna come down, and that's not true. I think that if you look at the statistics, just about as often when you're in those poor breadth situations where there's not much leadership, about just as often everything else ends up resolving up as often as that leadership ends up resolving down. What's unusual right now is the streak that we're on. I think today is day 12 of negative breadth in a row, and you can really see that when you look at the RSP chart versus the Qs, or even the SPY chart versus the Qs. I mean, this RSP chart, I've almost never really seen anything like this on the index level. Just this straight grind down here from all-time highs back down to, we're all the way back down to the post-election low. We're actually retesting the post-election low for the equal-weighted S&P. But the SPY itself, as we know, has just been consolidating up here and has stayed bullish. And the Qs, just yesterday, were at extreme upside extension. So you can really see the breadth. But it's unprecedented. 12 days in a row of negative market breadth after today, I think, ties the all-time record. But every other situation that is, in the top 10 of days in a row of market breadth are in periods of time where the market goes down, right? I think that the other time where if today is day 12, that ties the record. The other time that we had 12 days in a row of negative breadth, I don't remember which year it was. I just read a chart earlier today. The market was down 15% over the course of those 12 days. Like, that makes sense. You're going to have more losers than gainers day after day after day. Well, most likely over that period of time, the market's red. But this time around, we are now having 12 days in a row where the average stock, there's more losers than winners. But the S&P is actually positive over the course of that period of time. It's kind of a mind-blowing statistic for me, and it's completely unprecedented. We've never seen it before. So I don't know. I've spent so much time every time we're in these situations. It's happened so many times over the course of this calendar year 2024, where I'm reminding everyone, all right, just because Nvidia is the only stock in the market that's causing the S&P and the Nasdaq to move higher, it doesn't necessarily mean that the entire market has to go down. And we certainly were correct on that, right? 2024 has been a hell of a year. We're up a lot, 20+%, I think now, the second year in a row. But this time around, I don't know. This market is starting to feel, and I hate talking about feelings and feel when it comes to trading. I like to be a rules-based trader, but it's starting to feel like there's something wrong here. It's starting to feel like something's off. I really don't know how else to describe it. There's no leadership out there at all. I mean, it could be that this RSP creates a pivot, this IWM creates a pivot, and then we move higher. But it seems like there's just so few stocks that are moving higher. But the ones that are moving higher are like out of their mind. The way this Tesla's moving it's like nonsensical at this point. Day 3 to the upside on Tesla. It hasn't touched the 80 MA almost the entire month. Extreme upside extension at this point. I mean, it's really getting crazy. And Tesla still went out at highs. Closed at 480 today with the 80 MA at 430, the 21 EMA at 384. The way this market is trading right now, it's just really unusual. I mean, I've described that like Apple and Amazon, and Apple gave a day 2 today, that they weren't. Apple broke out of a bull flag yesterday. It was a classic technical bull flag, 4 days consolidation, 80 MA catches up to the base, then you get a breakout through the resistance, and then today we get a day 2. So now Apple's starting to extend a little bit again, but I know it's not nearly as nasty looking of a chart just in terms of extension as Tesla is right now. But and I know we had a negative day today, but I'm looking at this market and I'm like, I don't even understand anymore how some of these things are holding in as well as they are. I mean, I do. It's all market dynamics. It's all a lot of it has to do with the options market. A lot of it now has to do with these leveraged ETFs and the impact that they're having on individual stocks, because there's leverage in ETFs for every major stock that's out there. I mean, I was trading a 2x leverage short Tesla ETF just myself today. They can be pretty good vehicles, but that leverage has to come back into the stock itself at a certain point when a lot of people are trading it. And if you just look at this TSLQ for a second, we can try to look at the others to see if it's similar. Look at the volume increase on this TSLQ today. All of a sudden now with Tesla, where it's trading as extended as it's getting, you're getting a lot of interest in people trying to trade Tesla more aggressively, myself included, but not necessarily be involved in a $480 stock. So for me, it was like, I have a Tesla position on already, which is eating up, buying power because it's such an expensive stock. I'm like, why don't I, trade with a separate game plan, this TSLQ at the same time? It's a much cheaper stock. And I tend to really also like how, like $20 stocks, ETFs, whatever, tend to be a little bit more my sweet spot than trading like a $400 one, $500 one. It's kind of similar to when we were trading MSTR on the high here on this day, which we crushed. $550 ETF, but we were also trading. Oh man, there's so many of them. Was it MSTZ that we were trading, or a different one? I think it was a different one. I know that there were like 3 or 4 that we were trading almost all at the same time with that MSTR. But SMST, yeah, that was it. That was one of them for sure. I remember buying a boatload of this SMST at $3.50, and then we, catching a move to $7 all intraday. It was massive. That's right. Good memory there, Gilbert. So I don't know. I wish I had more for you on this. I wish I could say, hey guys, this is a real signal of X, Y, and Z when you start to see breadth like this consistently. But one, it is unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this happen before. I just kind of feel like at a certain point here, something almost needs to break that increases correlations again. I just can't put my finger on what that is. I don't know if it's the Fed meeting tomorrow. I don't know if it's OPEX this week. I don't know what that trigger actually is. We are starting to see, and Bill's been posting it, like a lot of VIX upside calls that are coming in from people beginning to hedge, and it is also related to this dispersion trade that we spent so much time talking about, which is a result of all the option selling that happens in the market that creates these huge amounts of positive gamma at the S&P level, which makes it. And where did the SPY close again today? SPY closed down 0.44%. It's like impossible for the SPY, not impossible, I'm exaggerating, but it seems like it's impossible for the SPY to move more than 0.5% in either direction, yet there's stuff out there that's going insane. I mean, we got XLE massively extended to the downside, which we're coming in and buying today. But then you got Tesla doing this. But you got utilities that are getting smoked down as well. You got a lot of these material names that are getting destroyed to the downside as well. You got some of these healthcare names that are getting destroyed to the downside as well. There's big movement in some of these stocks. The S&P can't budge, and that's just because so much positive S&P gamma in this market doesn't allow it to. But at a certain point, I start to get concerned that it can break. And what happens when the market breaks, if it does happen, if you get like a massive VIX spike and the correlations rapidly increase again and the dispersion trade disappears, is, you can get an August event. This is what this August event here. I know it primarily gets blamed on the yen carry trade, but that was just kind of a catalyst when you had the market dynamics built out in a certain way that it really created a VIX explosion that caused the market to move down, probably even more so than the yen carry itself. So I'm not saying that we're at that point right now, and I think, as everyone knows, I've been really super bullish pretty much ever since the election. Initially, I didn't want to chase extension, but once we got this pullback here on November 15th, I've been super bullish from that point forward. And generally, that's been the right call, though it depends what you're in. Because the RSP is retesting that level, and if you're in energy, materials, healthcare, they're well below those levels at this point. So just a really bizarre market that we're in right now, and it's actually for the first time starting to make me a little bit nervous. So yet I don't really know how to play it, to be totally honest. I'm trying to have shorts on. I'm trying to have longs on. But, you end up shorting these massive leaders because of their extension, and they continue to have these gamma squeezes higher, basically, in those individual stocks. It becomes really difficult at a certain point. And I knew yesterday we started shorting the Tesla a little bit too early, and then it got the upgrade from Mizuho after hours yesterday, which, again, if you read the information in that upgrade, it seems absurd to me. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're at. I don't really have anything else for us on that. I am still short this Tesla, just off the extension. My game plan is to trade it versus the ADMA on the daily chart, like I do. Which, if it goes to $500 plus, I could endorse some pain on it. But I mean, this is just hitting that point where I tend to be pretty successful coming the other direction on trades. As long as I'm patient enough. My biggest problem on them sometimes is I'm too early. And, that was the case yesterday to some degree, even though I was generally pretty patient. I didn't start sizing up until like nearly 460. But here we are, $20 higher on today's close. I think that kind of covers all I got. I wonder, like we started to see this XLE bounce today, which was also one of the calls. And this was a great call. We had a few great calls today. Let's actually, as much as I'm feeling nervous and stressed a little bit right now about this market, we had some phenomenal calls today that were real money makers. Called the XLE low today. Certainly required patience though. We called the long off the third 5-minute bar. We were already looking for the long because of this extension on the daily chart. We discussed that in the morning meeting. Then you got these 3 heavy bars to the downside that led to downside extension on a 5-minute in conjunction with the downside extension on the daily chart. So I like that for a long there. I struggled with this ADMA, consolidated all day. Luckily, XLE and most of those stocks never actually broke that low. So if you were leaning long versus that low, you were good. And then we saw the ExxonMobil calls hit in the last couple hours of the day that I think is what enabled this XLE to then roll up a little bit. ExxonMobil kind of led that charge when those calls hit. Chevron's been a focus for me, but Chevron did break its opening low, so that one kind of shook out a little bit. VAL, which I'm also in, also broke its opening low, but actually closed green today. That was a pretty nice bounce back in this. So, I'm looking for a further bounce back in some of these energy stocks. I wonder if that means, though, inherently that Tesla has to go down. It's crazy. I'm comparing Tesla versus energy stocks. Right? Maybe it's not that crazy when I say that out loud. I was going to say something else, but I'm going to stop myself from saying what I was going to say. It almost seems like you need to see Tesla to go down in order to see, I don't know, United Health to go up. Just to pick 2 things that are completely different from one another. But that's just been this environment that we've been in with this dispersion, unless something enables the correlations to flip. Sometimes doing these afternoon meetings lets me actually gather my thoughts a little bit better, even as I'm talking to you guys. So as I'm kind of going through some of these charts and looking at some of this, to me, we have like an extreme down move in some of these things. Again, materials, energy, healthcare. We've got extreme up moves in some other things. One of a couple things I think has to happen. So first of all, the market can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. That whole fun jazz that we always need to remind ourselves. What feels like extreme extension up in Tesla and extreme extension down in United Health could exaggerate even further. I don't think that this can last the way that this is trading. I don't think that UNH can continue to sell off the way it's been. I don't think XLE can continue to sell off the way that it's been. I don't think that Tesla can continue to get bought up the way that it has been. Doesn't mean it can't last for another day or two. One of 2 things I think has to happen. Either SPYs stay trapped like they've been, 0.5% down, 0.5% up, but under the surface, you get like a snapback of the rubber band that pulls Tesla back down, maybe to some degree like an Apple back down, while snapping up your energy, materials, and healthcare stocks, and the SPYs just continue to do nothing and grind around and grind their way higher. Or you get an event that causes correlations to increase. If there's an event that causes correlations to increase, it's more likely that it's to the downside, but it's not impossible that it's to the upside. Like a real S&P breaks out, spot up, vol up situation. You see the VIX moving higher with the S&P. More likely it's the opposite. Correlations increase, and correlations always tend to increase in down moves in the market. We know that. That's a general just market truism. Correlations increase in down moves. When people need to sell, they sell whatever. They don't care. They sell indiscriminately. So I kind of think that's it. Either there's an event that hits, what that event is, I don't know. What the timing is on that event, I don't know. That really increases correlation, probably with a bigger market move where the SPY breaks out of this 0.5% or less daily situation, or we get reversion. Again, I think you need an event to increase correlations or time. The other thing I think that could increase correlation is I still don't think that you quite have everybody fully in the pool insofar as positioning, but you can't look at this market either and say to yourself it's not feeling a little bit frothy now with what you're seeing with the quantum computing stocks. And how did Bitcoin end up doing today? Yeah, Bitcoin up again. MSTR is trash though. All right, I'm just gonna stop myself there because otherwise I'm just gonna ramble. But this was a good exercise for me because it enabled me to, I think, understand my own thoughts a little bit better on this market as I'm trying to figure this out, because something's starting to not feel right to me. And how that resolves is to be seen. But you can't just have, and energy is doing this without oil going down. What's Nat Gas been doing? I don't look at it as often. Yeah, Nat Gas has been range bound also. I don't think that you can continue to have this happen the way that it's been. Something's got to snap here, though it can last for potentially another couple days. I like the pairs trade of oil long, Tesla short, oil stocks long, Tesla short right now. It's just a matter of making sure that you don't get blown out if Tesla goes to 520 before that rubber band snap actually occurs. Yeah, so the energy was a good trade. You know, we had a couple great calls in this Tesla short. This Tesla call off this 10-10 bar while it was forming was a phenomenal call for the short versus not even the high of the day, the short versus the high of this candle. Great pullback on it. Still held the 15-minute uptrend. Bounced back. It bounced more than I felt it should, but it created another lower high that led to a lower low. Full gap fill. Stock even ticked negative at a certain point before it then decided to snap back $25, $27 or so off that low. So anyway, we'll see. I got the chief of compliance calling me, but I'll call him back. That's all I got. I'm just gonna stop myself there. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has. Fed tomorrow. It's a 95% probability of a cut. It's gonna happen. It's the question mark is on the dot plot and the forward guidance from the Fed, and also the market's starting to, I think, catch wind a little bit that the Fed might indicate that it's going to slow down on its easing cycle. Yeah, exactly. Expectation is for a hawkish Powell on top of that. But that's where a little bit more of the uncertainty is on this event still. So we'll see what he says. And this TLT, which I haven't spoken about as much because we had a real relief move here, is also potentially becoming a problem again if this breaks down a little bit further. So I said it initially in the post election rally when TLT was getting hit down, that a big interest rate move higher could really be the one thing that derails the market rally in this seasonally bullish period of time. And then once we got this bounce back in TLT on November 25th, when Trump announced Scott Bessent, it seemed like, all right, now there's no reason at all why the market shouldn't continue to move up. And it's kind of been the case until all of a sudden, pretty recently here, we've seen this big move up in interest rates again. So, yeah, we'll see what happens tomorrow. You had Tesla coming down a little bit. Thanks, Rich. It's hitting the VTF for now. Feel free if anybody else has anything in the VTF to post it in there. Popping over to the YouTube. How would you approach Tesla tomorrow? I like the idea of it giving a pullback at some point. I mean, yeah. So when it comes to attempting to short Tesla, you got a couple. I think that you basically have like a couple ways that you can approach it. One is to utilize more of the build-in style approach into extension. You got to be very careful with that. You got to make sure that your sizing is appropriate, and honestly, you have to have deep pockets. If you're in a small account, it doesn't work. The other thing is to wait for a signal. And today we had a great signal that was called out in the VTF off this 10-10 high. So something similar to that. The pattern was it broke higher, it made new highs, new all-time highs. It began to pull back a little bit. Didn't quite pull back to the 80 MA, but there's so much momentum in Tesla that this pullback combined with this inside 5, when this broke this inside 5 to the upside, even though it hadn't pulled back to the 80 MA on the 5-minute and it was just after 10 o'clock, just with the way that Tesla's been trading, the momentum that it's had, it should have ripped to new highs. It failed to do so. It broke that inside 5 and immediately began to tail down. As that tail down was even forming, we recognized that as a short signal to short. I called it out at the same time. I think Pat and Josh both called it out, others in the VTF as well. And that's the type of signal that you want to look for to actually lay into that trade. And it worked pretty well. I was actually disappointed. I wanted more follow through on this thing. I wanted this thing to, do, and I kind of felt it wasn't going to, but I wanted it to do a little bit more similar to what we saw on the Palantir day 3 gap up or the MSTR day 4 gap up that led to those big sell moves. So when we were breaking lows and going red on this thing and then we bounced back, I was just disappointed because I wanted more. I traded it really well today, despite not getting the follow through that I wanted. I'm pretty happy with how I traded it, but that's a signal that you look for. Book some profit on the way down. Recognize that you're taking a counter trend trade, but also recognize that the profit potential, if we were to really capture Tesla properly, if we really caught this Tesla trade properly and that was it and never broke back to highs and actually never did break that high again even at the close, though it closed uncomfortably strong. Recognize though, if you capture this short here, and you could have shorted this with $2-3 worth of risk, which sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot for Tesla. Recognize that the reward potential on that trade is a move to 430. Recognize that even though it's a counter trend trade, you could be shorting here for a couple of dollars worth of risk and capturing a $50 downside move on it. Also recognize it's a counter trend trade. What do we know about counter trend trades? That they have a pretty high probability of failure by nature of being counter trend. So you want to make sure you're booking some profit quickly. You should never be upset if you shorted Tesla at 481 versus 483 and you covered stock at 475 to take some risk off the table and put some money in your pocket, and then Tesla went to 430. You should never be upset that you covered some at 475. It's part of the game plan. It's part of risk management. It's part of recognizing that trades, especially counter trend trades, have a high probability of failure. But those are the signals that you want to be looking for to actually lay into the trade, especially if you are dealing with a little bit of a smaller account where precision becomes more important. So appreciate the question, Cyril. I hope that helps. Daddy Trades is letting me know. Your name cracks me up every time I say it out loud. 9 straight red days for the Dow. It's the longest since the 1970s. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, this looks like the SPY, the RSP. This looks like, to some degree, the IWM, though the IWM was able to pepper in a green day yesterday. This is a very unusual market. 11 consecutive days of more decliners than advancers in the S&P. It's the first time since September 11th, 2001. Yeah, I think that makes it 12 now today. Are we good to short QUBT? I got it on my radar. I ended up staying away from it today. I've got this on my radar. I've got this RGTI tomorrow on my radar as well. If these things can give new highs again tomorrow, I love the idea of looking for the RDR. One more high on these things tomorrow, and I kind of want to be all in on the short on these. That's interesting. Yeah, QUBT, RGTI, very much on my radar for tomorrow if they set up well. Kevin G letting us know that Apple has been a technical analyst's dream if you've been day trading it long. Yeah, I think that Apple's been trading really, really well. Scott saying Tesla is so overbought, but it feels like the bullishness may continue. It may. Like I said, you may get another day. You may get another couple days here. I don't think that this can last. I would almost say I know that this rate of acceleration cannot last in Tesla, but it can last another day, another 2 days. But it's at the point here where, probabilistically speaking, I would much rather be short than long in the smaller time frame. Um, but it's not to say it can't top out at, you could top out at 480, could top out at 520, could top out at 550. It's just the way the market is right now with some of the stuff we were just talking about. From Steve-O, do you think the amount of analyst upgrades is unusual versus previous periods in the market? I don't mean to sound so sinister, but do they truly sincere about their beliefs, or do they have other motivations? Oh, don't get me started on sell side analysts. I go on rants every once in a while on how terrible they are. I think that most sell side analysts who are creating these price targets at the big banks for individual stocks and doing upgrades and downgrades are complete and utter jokers. Their incentives are all screwed up. They don't want to piss off management by having a sell rating on the stock a lot of the times. And I mean, look what happened in 2022 to Mike Wilson. Look, market prediction at the analyst level is tricky. When you take a stand on something like Mike Wilson did in 2022, when he said that, I don't remember what his S&P target was, but he was just coming out with bearish note after bearish note after bearish note. And I know we had a bear market in 2022. It was a very, very shallow bear market. It was like 22% down or something like that. But he was calling for the market to like burn to the ground that year, to go down so much more than it actually did. And he's still involved in Wall Street, but him and Marco Kolanovic like basically lost their jobs by being bearish. And Marco in particular, he turned bearish at the bottom in October 2022. Your job as an analyst is more secure if you just follow what the stocks are doing. So I don't necessarily think it's sinister. I just think that you got to take what these guys say with a grain of salt. Their number one motivation is not to provide you, Johnny Day Trader, with a target that you should be buying a stock based off of. It's information. It's put stocks in play for us. But I've been seeing this forever, where the more a price goes up for a stock, the more the analysts come out and upgrade it. That's not new for this environment that we're in right now. But we're seeing it right now, as we always do. The more things go up, the more they upgrade them. It's so normal. Thank you for the question there, Steve-O. I gave you the short answer. From Daddy Trades, it's been a minute since I've taken a long on NVIDIA, but I bought equity in January 135 calls today, and I doubled down on AMD. I added some January 135 calls as well. Oh, these are trading at like the same price, almost. Yeah, I mean, look, these things are really weak, and it's also an interesting one. I was wondering if NVIDIA bounced today, if it meant that Tesla would go down, or what. NVIDIA did manage to have a bounce today. I don't know. The NVIDIA chart's a little bit broken right now. Big picture, I think dips are viable on this thing. I want something deeper though. I want like mid to low 120s in NVIDIA for me to start to look at it. It almost got there. The bounce back today makes sense. But AMD and NVIDIA, the charts are both a little bit broken. You really need this NVIDIA to get back above 135 to look healthy again. AMD, I'm long AMD. It's not a big position. I'm still in the money on it because I traded it pretty well. But AMD's got to get back above 132.50, and then it's really got to get back above 135 in order to start looking better again. But we'll see. The semis are a little tricky right now because Oh, there's just so many moving parts to try to figure out what's going to make these semis move. Are they going to move with the Nasdaq? Are they going to move if correlations increase? If correlations don't increase, is are Nvidia and AMD more like a XLE and a UNH, or are they more like a an Apple or a Google, or is it somewhere in between? You know, it's a little tricky with these names, so I'm not sure. I'm trading a little AMD alongside, but I'm generally being patient with it. Would you say that bullish seasonality extends to March? Uh, I got to do. You're asking me about pretty far out dates. I got to redo some research to answer that question, to be honest with you. Um, I think generally that's a strong period of time. I think that generally you can have a weak period in the second half of January, and then my February seasonality is escaping me mentally right now. I haven't looked out that far in a while, so not gonna make something up. Just not 100% sure. Um, for Tesla, you damn near need to smack the short on an intraday explosive move versus breaking down and expecting it to reject and break lower. A lot of eyes on Tesla short will make false breakdowns. Yeah, until it happens, you need to just break Tesla hard enough that it goes into one of those spots where it starts to actually become a feedback cycle of selling. From Scott, how are you positioning for the upcoming new year and new administration? Do you have a 2025 thesis? I'm not in the business of big picture predictions. You know, when we get into the beginning of any new year, one of the things that annoys me the most on CNBC is you get all these analysts that tell you their end of the year S&P forecast. So much can happen over the course of a calendar year. Um, on January 1st, 2020, there probably weren't that many people saying we're going to get a worldwide pandemic that, you know, destroys the market, but then we come in with huge, you know, easing from the Fed, and it actually rips the market higher. You know, it's just it's so hard. So I take it one step at a time. You know, I think that my look forward on the market tends to not go out more than a couple months at a time. So, you know, and it's also constantly evolving. I like to joke, I'm not a politician. I'm allowed to change my mind. And I change my mind quickly and often as new evidence presents itself from the market. So, you know, basically, I've just been looking for this bullish end of the year period, November, December, first half of January. And then my continued plan has been my plan for over a month now. It hasn't changed. Has been to really reassess where we are by mid-January. Um, that is in conjunction with when President Trump takes office, but that's a coincidence more than anything. It has more to do, and I'm sure that that'll have some sort of an impact, but it has more to do with seasonality, flow, bullish flows ending, and then options expiration in mid-January, and the potential effect of that on the market. Thanks for the question, Scott. Gotcha. Sorry, just reading some comments in the YouTube. Yeah. Yeah, you do see some unusual option stuff, and that's why we pay attention to unusual options activity. All right. I gotta actually jump here and go do something. I'm not seeing anything new in the VTF or the YouTube, so I'm gonna end it there. Have a great night, everybody. See you all tomorrow.